So if you've been paying attention to the stream tonight, you'll notice that one of the promises that I made was that I was going to red pill chat on voting. And the reason for that is there's been a lot of fucking dumb people in the online left recently making some really, really dumb statements regarding voting. So we're just going to do this. All right. I was going to talk about this on last stream. And the reason I didn't, it is relevant to the Pride Month theming that I did last stream because I wanted to catch up on some of the Pride Month discourse. But the reason I saved it for today is because I actually feel like it is one of those examples that I can use for why you should be voting. And in particular, why, unfortunately, we should still be voting for Biden. I know that this is the moment where a lot of you are going to leave. A lot of you are going to get mad. We're going to like kick and scream because we don't wanna. But I keep seeing the god awful fucking take that there are no differences between Trump and Biden, and that if Biden gets elected, he'll be just as bad for the queer community as Donald Trump. And I need you to understand that that line of thinking is 100% a Republican psyop. It is literally a conservative psyop. They are actually I'm going full Alex Jones here. It's red flags. They're actors, they're crisis actors trying to convince you that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are exactly the same when it comes to the queer community. Because this is 100% not true. Base John Oliver also preaches this. Well, that's because John Oliver copies my stream. So I this article is one that I actually saw the day that I streamed last. We're gonna look at it. Trump in Wisconsin announces funding ban for trans supportive schools on day one. So let's look at the relevant quote here. Though the first hour of the speech went by without a mention of LGBTQ plus people, Trump turned his attention towards schools abruptly after speaking about crime, where he announced his day one priorities. We're going to be proud of our capital. We're going to take care of our capital. On day one, I will sign a new executive order to cut federal funding of any school pushing critical race theory, transgender insanity, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content onto the lives of our children, and I will not give 1 penny to any school that has a vaccine mandate or a mask. If there's even one mask in the building, the funding's gone. Reading this, we can all see that this is absolutely 100% identical to Biden's policies. Biden, known critical race theory hater, Joe Biden. Is anyone getting it? I guess I can't bring my hockey mask to school. Yeah, if you bring any mask. He then turns to the topic of transgender athletes, claiming that a cisgender woman was injured by a volleyball hit by a transgender woman, which he claimed, quote, came out at her at a speed at which she's never seen before. Literally, the cis woman was hit by a volleyball at the speed of light. It was light speed. She's dead now. This is not the first time that Donald Trump has spoken about transgender issues. Recently, his campaign slammed President Biden's proclamation of Transgender Day of Visibility as blasphemous for falling on the same day as Easter. Yeah, did everyone forget, by the way, that Biden reaffirmed Transgender Day of Visibility? And then Republicans got mad about that. These are the same people. They're the same, it's the same picture. Oh my God, is that President Biden right there? These are the same people. There are no differences between these two candidates whatsoever when it comes to the queer community. They're exactly the same. If you elect Biden, he's going to do the exact same stuff as Donald Trump. Recently, at a rally in Michigan, he stated that his day one priorities included reversing Title IX protections for trans youth. Same candidate as Joe Biden. Same candidate, same person. They're the exact same. No differences. Nothing. Likewise, last year he released a video stating he intends to target programs promoting gender-affirming care at any age and to treat gender-affirming care as child abuse. Same candidate as Joe Biden. Same. No, there's no differences. There's nothing. Let's take a look at this one. This is from a little bit earlier in the month. Oh, this is from my birthday. Trump said on day one he would reverse the Biden administration's expansion of Title IX that will prohibit federally funded schools from preventing transgender students from using the bathrooms, locker rooms, and pronouns that align with their gender identities. Trump told a crowd in Iowa in March that he would sign an executive order to cut federal funding for schools pushing critical race theory, transgender insanity, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our children. In January, he released a video detailing a range of policies targeting gender-affirming care for minors, including pressing Congress to approve a federal ban and several measures to restrict federal funding when it came to trans issues. Trump said he would block doctors who provide gender-affirming care from Medicare and Medicaid, forbid federal agencies from actions to, quote, promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age, and task the Justice Department with investigating the medical industry to see if they deliberately covered up horrific long-term side effects of sex transitions in order to get rich. In the video, Trump laid out additional plans for extending the restrictions to schools, promising severe consequences, including potential civil rights violations for educators who suggest to a child they could get trapped in the wrong body. In 2022, Trump told a crowd in Texas he would ban transgender individuals from competing in women's sports and attacked transgender swimmer Leah Thomas weeks after her hotly debated record-breaking swim meet in Ohio while she was competing on the University of Pennsylvania swim team. This is like not even mentioning the fact that while Trump was president, he also did bar trans people from joining the military, something that Biden reversed. Are you getting what I'm saying here? When it comes, and I know what the rebuttal is going to be. I know what the rebuttal is going to be. Okay? Because I've heard it. I've heard it before. And I know they're going to say, Saige, you're just focusing on one issue. You're just being a single issue voter while criticizing people for being single issue voters. You're doing the exact same thing you're mad about. You're just focusing on the queer community. You obviously hate brown people because you're focusing on the queer community. Shut the fuck up. Please. Please. I need you. I need you to put 5 pounds of cotton balls in your fucking mouth. And then I need you to roll around in a pile of Elmer's glue. And then I want you to sit there with yourself and think about what you just said. I have this helpful little guide here on queer issues and where the two candidates stand. President Biden kicked off Pride Month this year with a message to LGBTQ plus Americans posting, "Your president and my entire administration have your back." All right, chill, old man. Former President Trump has been quiet on social media when it comes to LGBTQ issues and has railed against trans women's participation in sports at a recent campaign rally in Vegas. If it wasn't already clear, these top two presidential candidates hold distinct views on LGBTQ issues. So let's take a look. Throughout his presidency, Biden has used his office to express support for LGBTQ people, celebrate Transgender Day of Visibility and Pride Month, and regularly make social media calls about the issues LGBTQ plus people face. His administration has worked to establish anti-discrimination protections for sexual orientation and gender identity, as well as greater access to gender-affirming care. Trump's record includes dismantling discrimination protections and placing restrictions on transgender service members. LGBTQ plus issues were a small part of Trump's presidency, but his 2020 campaign included Trump Pride outreach targeting LGBTQ plus supporters. In 2020, Log Cabin Republicans, which represents LGBTQ plus conservatives, also known as the Leopards Eating My Face Party, endorsed him. The group cited Trump administration programs that address the ongoing HIV epidemic and a campaign to end worldwide criminalization of homosexuality. Trump also appointed the first openly gay cabinet secretary, Richard Grenell, who served as acting director of national intelligence. Although Trump has been more accepting on some LGBTQ plus issues than his Republican counterparts, most of his stances, especially regarding transgender Americans, stand in stark contrast to Biden's. So let's look at this. So here are some ostensibly some positive things. Trump did appoint the first openly gay cabinet secretary, Richard Grenell. That is good. We can look him up in a bit and see how decent of a pick that was. But I'm guessing if Trump appointed him, he probably was not serving the interests of the queer community. Though it is good that there has been at least any representation. So, we take our small wins, I guess. In February 2020, HHS awarded $117 million to end the HIV epidemic in the US. So this is good. It is a good thing. And a campaign to end worldwide criminalization of homosexuality. This one's a little bit more complicated because while this is ostensibly something Trump did, he still has appointed people and still supports politicians that would like to erase the Supreme Court decision that allowed marriage equality in the US in the first place. So you can say that some of the notes here, as far as Biden's positive traits, expressing support, celebrating Trans Day of Visibility, making social media calls about the issues that we face, are kind of toothless. There are things that he can do without any effort, and they don't have any tangible real world consequences on the queer community. I would agree with that to a point. There is a way in which the normalization of these things by having high level figures talk about them in a positive light does lead to positive outcomes. But I will agree that these things are not exactly hard activism. However, anti-discrimination protections, greater access to gender affirming care, these are literally two of the basic fundamental things that we actually need, as opposed to trying to end criminalization of homosexuality in other countries while supporting politicians that want to make it illegal in our own country. Addressing the ongoing HIV epidemic, that was at least a good thing. And appointing an openly gay cabinet secretary who probably was not actually really serving our interests. So let's continue. Both Trump and Biden have evolved on the issue of marriage equality before arriving at a similar stance that support gay rights. Biden first publicly declared his support for same-sex marriage in a 2012 Meet the Press appearance, saying that marriages are at their roots about love, whether they are marriages of lesbians or gay men or heterosexual. In December 2022, Biden signed the Respect for Marriage Act, federally recognizing same-sex and interracial marriages and creating legal protections if the Supreme Court were to overturn its 2015 precedent on marriage equality. Across his administration, several departments, including the State Department, Department of Veterans Affairs, and the Social Security Administration, updated policies to extend benefits to same-sex couples. And although Biden has suggested he supports gay couples since his youth, his earlier policy decisions reflect otherwise. As a U.S. Senator, Biden voted in favor of the Defense of Marriage Act, which defined marriage as only between a man and a woman. In his 2008 vice presidential campaign, he expressed his support for equal benefits for same-sex couples, but not for legal marriage. And by the way, I want to point out, people will look at this, and I see people do this all the time. They'll point out that Biden was not good on marriage equality in 1996 and 2008. I need to remind you all. It is the year of our Lord 2024. It is not 1996. It is also not 2008. Biden is supporting stuff now in 2022, signing the Respect for Marriage Act, creating legal protections if the Supreme Court were to overturn its precedent. In interviews prior to his presidency, Trump opposed same-sex marriage and said he supported traditional marriage. In 2016, he said he would consider appointing justices who would overturn the Supreme Court's 2015 decision in Obergefell v. Hodges, which legalized same-sex marriage across the U.S., but changed his position shortly after he was elected when he described the issue as settled. Advocating for or against same-sex marriage was not a significant part of Trump's presidency or political platform, which, as some noted, set him apart from other Republicans at the time. Now, the fact that Trump is not an immediate threat to gay marriage in the sense that he's not openly trying to dismantle it should not fill you with confidence when he is literally appointing people who are. And yeah, even if it's a virtue signal now, it's still a good thing. And by the way, I would say this is not a virtue signal. I mean, it might be in like the literal sense of the word. But if we're just going based on the idea that the Biden administration is doing a thing just to garner support, this still has tangible effects. It's not like he's doing nothing. This is a virtue signal. This is not. Please learn the difference. God, I am begging you, please learn the difference. Military members. I know we all love the military here. Biden has implemented policies allowing LGBTQ people to serve openly in the military. Trump aimed to restrict military participation by trans people. In a July 2017 tweet, Trump declared that the United States government will not accept or allow transgender individuals to serve in any capacity in the U.S. military. This policy aimed to reverse a 2016 Obama-era policy allowing trans people to serve openly. In 2023, Trump claimed that he banned transgender people from serving in the military, and we rated it as mostly true. That's because after his policy was announced, it faced numerous legal challenges that delayed its implementation. In April 2019, the ban went into effect, allowing active transgender members to serve openly only if they had already received a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. Active members who received a diagnosis after the policy's implementation date would have to serve under the sex assigned to them at birth, and people diagnosed with gender dysphoria or who had already undergone transition could not enlist. This policy continued until January 2021, when Biden rescinded it with an executive order a few days after taking office, and the policy allowing military participation was published by the Defense Department in March 2021. Biden's administration has also overseen an expansion of support for trans veterans and provided gender-affirming medical care for service members. Trump has promised to reinstate the ban on transgender people in the military if he's reelected. That said, Biden's current stance represents a slight shift from his earlier years as a lawmaker. In 1993, he ended up voting in favor of a defense spending bill, even though it implemented the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, requiring LGBTQ service members to not disclose their sexual orientation, prohibiting officers from asking. During Biden's tenure as vice president, Barack Obama signed a law repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell, a decision Biden has celebrated. Access to gender-affirming care for youth. Trump opposes youth access to gender-affirming care. Biden supports it. In videos outlining his 2024 presidential agenda, Trump described gender-affirming care as, quote, chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of youth, and promised to end all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age. He also advocated revoking Medicaid and Medicare funding from any hospital or healthcare provider that gives gender-affirming care to minors. He also said he would ask Congress to pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutilation in all 50 states. This year, Congress entertained several bills to ban gender-affirming care for youth nationally, but none became law. Experts told PolitiFact that it is inaccurate to characterize gender-affirming surgeries as mutilation. Biden's administration has shown more support for youth access to gender-affirming care, most often expressed by cabinet members and spokespeople. In an executive order, Biden banned conversion therapy in federally funded programs, and the Justice Department sent a letter to all state attorneys general calling discriminatory the practice of restricting access to gender-affirming care. In March 2022, Biden released his own statement after Texas Governor Greg Abbott ordered state officials to launch child abuse investigations into reports of transgender kids receiving gender-affirming care. In it, Biden called for expanded access to gender-affirming care for trans youth and cited the support of most major medical organizations. Later that month, on Transgender Day of Visibility, the White House released a fact sheet detailing the administration's efforts to support access to mental and medical health care for trans youth, something we can actually look at here, since we want to talk about what Biden actually did. Parents or caregivers who believe their child has been denied health care, including gender-affirming care on the basis of that child's gender identity, may file a complaint with OCR. Healthcare providers who believe that they are or have been unlawfully restricted from providing health care to a patient on the basis of that patient's gender identity may file a complaint with OCR. Yeah, we'll have to read this here in a bit. Biden has urged federal agencies to implement greater anti-discrimination protections. Trump's administration was criticized as dismantling them. Shortly after Trump's inauguration, pages related to LGBTQ issues began disappearing from federal agency websites. In early 2017, Trump issued an executive order making Obama-era LGBTQ workplace discrimination rules more difficult to enforce, and the Education Department revoked guidance that required schools to let trans students use the bathroom of their choice. In 2019, the Trump-era Justice Department filed a Supreme Court brief arguing against the inclusion of sexual orientation and gender identity in the Title VII protections of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It represented a departure from Trump's comments in a 2000 interview in which he said he supported amending the law to include sexual orientation. Many of Biden's policies have been a reversal of Trump's. On Biden's first day in office, he signed an executive order directing each federal agency to review and revise its policies to ensure they do not discriminate on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation in light of a 2020 Supreme Court case. Several federal agencies responded, releasing guidance and in some cases formal regulations clarifying that sex discrimination includes discrimination based on gender identity and sexual orientation. Biden has also repeatedly called for the passage of the Equality Act, which would add protections specific to LGBTQ+ people to the Civil Rights Act. Biden has also spoken out against anti-LGBTQ+ violence. And you can see all of their sources down here. There's a ton of them. So, are we satisfied yet? Are we satisfied that Trump and Biden are in fact not the same when it comes to the queer community? They in fact will not be the same candidate on this issue. But Saige, you're still doing the single issue thing. You're still not talking about anything. What about Palestine? What about Palestine? Let's take a look at their stances on non-queer issues. Since I know some of you are not going to be satisfied with just the queer community, because I want to prove to you that this is not just me being a single issue voter. I'm not advocating that you should vote for Biden just because he'll be better for the queer community. Abortion. Biden. The president has called for Congress to send him legislation that would codify in federal law the right to an abortion, which stood for nearly 50 years before being overturned by the Supreme Court, a Supreme Court that Donald Trump fucking appointed, by the way. He's also criticized statewide bans on abortion in Republican states and says he will veto any potential nationwide ban should one come to his desk. In the absence of legislation, his administration has taken narrower actions, such as proposals that would protect women who travel to obtain abortions and limit how law enforcement collects medical records. Trump. The former president often brags about appointing the Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe v. Wade, ending the constitutional right to an abortion. After dodging questions about when in pregnancy he believes the procedure should be restricted, Trump announced in April that decisions on access and cutoff should be left to the states. He said he would not sign a national abortion ban into law, but he's declined to say whether he would try to limit access to the abortion pill mifepristone. He told Time magazine in recent interviews that it should be left up to states to determine whether to prosecute women for abortions or to monitor their pregnancies. This is him getting it both ways, by the way. Like, I do not believe for 1 second that he won't do this. But even if I take him at his word, that he won't sign an abortion ban, that he would veto one, Biden wants to sign legislation that will codify it into law. These are not the same thing. Yeah, having states monitor pregnancies, much better than Biden. Climate. In a second term, Biden could be expected to continue his focus on implementing the climate provisions of his Inflation Reduction Act, which provided nearly $375 billion for things like financial incentives for electric cars and clean energy projects. Biden is also enlisting more than 20,000 young people in a National Climate Corps, a Peace Corps-like program to promote conservation through tasks such as weatherizing homes and repairing wetlands. Biden wants to triple the group's size this decade. Despite all of this, it's unlikely the U.S. will be on track to meet Biden's goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by half by 2030. Now, is Biden great on the climate? No. But let's see how Trump is doing. His mantra for one of his top priorities, drill baby drill. Trump, who in the past cast climate change as a hoax and harbors a particular disdain for wind power, says it's his goal for the U.S. to have the cheapest energy and electricity in the world. He'd increase oil drilling on public lands, offer tax breaks to oil, gas, and coal producers, speed up the approval of natural gas pipelines, and roll back the Biden administration's aggressive efforts to get people to switch to electric cars, which he argues have a place but shouldn't be forced on consumers. He has also pledged to re-exit the Paris Climate Accords, end wind subsidies, and eliminate regulations imposed and proposed by the Biden administration targeting energy-inefficient kinds of light bulbs, stoves, dishwashers, and shower heads. Say what you will, But undoing everything, like undoing all of the kind of middling things that Biden has done is still worse than what Biden is trying to do. Democracy. Biden delivered his first campaign speech of 2024 near Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, where he spoke of George Washington's decision to step down as the leader of the Continental Army after American independence was won. During the January 5th speech, Biden said this year's presidential contest is all about whether U.S. democracy will survive, and he regularly condemns Trump's denial that he lost the 2020 general election. Biden has called the January 6, 2021 assault on the Capitol a day that we nearly lost America. Now, is this cringe? Yes. Is he correct? Unfortunately, also yes. The former president, who famously refused to accept his loss to Biden in 2020, has not committed to accepting the results this time. If everything's honest, he says, I'll gladly accept the results. Trump recently told the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. If it's not, you have to fight for the right of the country. He said he will pardon the January 6 defendants jailed for assaulting police officers and other crimes during the attack on the Capitol. He vows to overhaul the Justice Department and the FBI, quote, from the ground up, aggrieved by the criminal charges the department has brought against him. He also promises to deploy the National Guard to cities such as Chicago that are struggling with violent crime and in response to protests, and has also vowed to appoint a special prosecutor to go after Biden. Same people. Federal government. The Biden administration is already taking steps to make it harder for any mass firings of civil servants to occur. In April, the Office of Personnel Management issued a new rule that would ban federal workers from being reclassified as political appointees or other at-will employees, which makes them easier to dismiss. That was in response to Schedule F, a 2020 executive order from Trump that reclassified tens of thousands of federal workers so they could be fired more easily. Trump, the former president, vows an overhaul of the federal bureaucracy, which he has long blamed for stymieing his first-term agenda. Quote, I will totally obliterate the deep state. He's still doing that. He plans to reissue the Schedule F order stripping civil service protections. He'd then move to fire, quote, rogue bureaucrats, including those who, quote, weaponized our justice system and the warmongers and America's last globalists in the deep state, the Pentagon, the State Department, and the National Security Industrial Complex. He's pledged to terminate the Education Department and wants to curtail the independence of regulatory agencies like the FCC. This is insane. Immigration. The president continues to advocate for the comprehensive immigration bill he introduced on his first day in office, which would grant an 8-year pathway to citizenship for immigrants in the U.S. without legal status, with a faster track for young immigrants living in the country illegally who were brought here as children. That legislation went nowhere in Congress. This year, the president backed a Senate compromise that included tougher asylum standards and billions more in federal dollars to hire more border agents, immigration judges, and asylum officers. That deal collapsed on Capitol Hill due to Trump's opposition. Biden is currently considering executive action on the border, particularly if the number of illegal crossings increases later this year. So, mixed bag. Not great. Trump. The former president promises to mount the largest domestic deportation in U.S. history, an operation that could include detention camps and the National Guard. Same candidate. Same people. He'd bring back policies he put in place during his first term, like the Remain in Mexico program and Title 42, which placed curbs on migrants on public health grounds, and he'd revive and expand the travel ban that originally targeted citizens from 7 Muslim-majority countries. After the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel, he pledged new ideological screening for immigrants to bar, quote, dangerous lunatics, haters, bigots, and maniacs. He'd also try to deport people who are in the U.S. legally but harbor, quote, jihadist sympathies. He'd seek to end birthright citizenship for people born in the U.S. whose parents are both in the country illegally. I'm not sure if you're aware, but that's not pro-Palestine rhetoric coming from Donald Trump. Israel and Gaza. Let's take a look. The war in Gaza, far more so than any other national security considerations, has defined Biden's foreign policy this year with significant political implications. He offered a full-throated support for Israel since Hamas militants launched a surprise deadly assault on October 7th. But as the death toll in Gaza continues to climb, Biden has faced massive backlash at home. His administration is working to broker a temporary ceasefire that would release some hostages held by Hamas, which would also allow for more humanitarian aid to enter the war-torn region. Biden also calls for a two-state solution, which would have Israel existing alongside an independent Palestinian state. So, again, Biden is handling the war in Gaza absolutely poorly. Like, he's not doing very good. And we're going to get into it a little bit later as to why his stuff regarding the war in Palestine is really not good. But I want to make it clear, he's not doing great here. It's good that he wants a ceasefire. It's good that he wants humanitarian aid. I would like to see him actually do it. Trump. The former president has expressed support for Israel's efforts to, quote, destroy Hamas, but he's also been critical of some of Israel's tactics. He says the country must finish the job quickly and get back to peace. By the way, what do you think finish the job quickly is referring to? It is not a ceasefire. He is literally saying that Palestine needs to be glassed. That's what he's advocating for. He has called for more aggressive responses to pro-Palestinian protests at college campuses and applauded police efforts to clear encampments. Trump also proposes to revoke the student visas of those who espouse anti-Semitic or anti-American views. Do you understand that these two are not the same on Palestine, and that Trump will be measurably worse? NATO Ukraine, the war that everyone was really, really concerned about until a new one happened, and now nobody cares anymore. For Biden, the president has spent much of his time rebuilding alliances unraveled by Trump, particularly NATO, a critical bulwark against Russian aggression. Since the onset of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Biden has pledged unceasing support to Kyiv, and he made an unannounced visit there in February 2023 in a show of solidarity. His administration and Congress have sent tens of billions of dollars in military and other aid to Ukraine. The latest tranche of aid totaled $61 billion in weapons, ammunition, and other assistance, and is expected to last through this year. Continued U.S. assistance is critical, Biden says, because he argues that the Russian leader Vladimir Putin will not stop at invading Ukraine. Trump. The former president has repeatedly taken issue with U.S. aid to Ukraine and says he will continue to, quote, fundamentally reevaluate the mission and purpose of the NATO alliance if he returns to office. He has claimed, without explanation, that he will be able to end the war before his inauguration by bringing both sides to the negotiating table. His approach seems to hinge on Ukraine giving up at least some of its Russian-occupied territory in exchange for a ceasefire. On NATO, he has assailed member nations for years for failing to hit agreed-upon military spending targets. Trump drew alarms this year when he said that as president, he had warned leaders that he would not only refuse to defend nations that don't hit those targets, but would encourage Russia to do whatever the hell they want to countries that are delinquent. Tariffs. This might be the only thing that the people saying that Trump and Biden are identical have going for them. This is where Biden and his protectionist tendencies and a continued appeal to working class voters have some similarities with Trump. Biden is calling for a tripling of tariffs on Chinese steel, a move that would shield U.S. producers from cheaper imports. The current tariff rate is 7.5% for both steel and aluminum, but Biden wants that to go to 25%. Biden has also said he opposes the proposed acquisition of U.S. steel by Japan's Nippon Steel because it is, quote, vital for it to remain an American steel company that is domestically owned and operated. Trump. The former president wants a dramatic expansion of tariffs, proposing a levy of perhaps 10% on nearly all imported foreign goods. Penalties would increase if trade partners manipulate their currencies or engage in other unfair trading practices. He would also encourage Congress to pass legislation on giving the president authority to impose a reciprocal tariff on any country that imposes one on the U.S. Much of his trade agenda is focused on China. Trump has proposed phasing out Chinese imports of essential goods, including electronics, steel, and pharmaceuticals, and wants to ban Chinese companies from owning U.S. infrastructure in sectors such as energy, technology, and farmland. Whether higher tariffs come from a Biden administration or a Trump one, they are likely to raise prices for consumers who have already faced higher costs from inflation. Taxes. In his State of the Union address, Biden proposed raising the corporate tax rate to 28% and the corporate minimum tax to 21% as a matter of fundamental fairness. That will bring in more money to invest in Americans. The current corporate tax rate is 21%, and the minimum, raised under the Inflation Reduction Act, is at 15% for companies making more than $1 billion a year. Biden also wants to require billionaires to pay at least 25% of their income in taxes and to restore the child tax credit that was enacted under his 2021 COVID-19 relief package, but has since expired. Trump has promised to extend the tax cut he signed into law in 2017, and they're due to sunset at the end of 2025. That package cut the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21% and roughly doubled the standard deduction and child tax credit. Are you satisfied? Have I done enough to explain how these two candidates are not the same, even on Palestine, and especially on literally every issue save for fucking tariffs? Of course they're the same on trade. It's the US fucking government. Now, you might say, this only proves that we need better politicians to be able to vote for, because obviously, as we just established, Biden is not exactly uniquely great. He's not amazing. He's kind of disappointing in a lot of ways. And I need you all to understand. I need you all to, I don't know how to keep explaining this to everyone, but your third party candidate is not going to win. Not yet. We got to keep working on that. I want third party candidates to have viability. I want to see more than just the two candidates being the ones that we can vote for. But the problem is, that's not going to happen. It is not feasible. It is not something that we can really accomplish right now because we don't have the political infrastructure or political power to accomplish it. And right now, our candidates are Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And you might think that you are saving your conscience by not voting, because you're voting, you're doing the South Park rhetoric, you know? It's between a douche and a shit sandwich, right? And you're saving your conscience by not voting because you're not participating in giving a bad person more power. And you know what I have to say to that? Fuck you. That's what I have to say to that. And the reason why is because that kind of attitude is missing the fucking point. You're not saving your conscience. You're closing your eyes to whatever happens next. You're saying whatever happens is between you and God, and I don't want a part of it. You're standing in the face of potential harm being done to several different groups of people, and you're saying, I don't want to hear about it. That's what's happening, and I do not respect that. It is not good political advocacy. It does not make you a more moral person. It, in fact, makes you a less moral person. Politics suck. It is dirty. It is fucking gross. It doesn't make you feel good. You never get the satisfaction. You never get the endorphin rush. You never get the serotonin of watching the good thing happen. You keep fighting for little, tiny wins until the end of your life. And then you die. And then you hope that the people who come after you will do the same thing. So fuck you. Get out there. It will take you fucking 5 minutes. Go to the booth. Cast the vote for Biden. Please, for the love of God, vote down ballot. Vote for your local fucking elections. And at least give us 4 more years to try to push someone left. Because it's going to be way fucking harder during the term of a person that literally wants to get rid of democracy. All of you who engage in this anti-electoralist bullshit are actually, to me, worse than conservatives. Because at least they fucking believe something. You guys don't seem to believe anything except that you don't want to participate. But you want to speak a lot of shit about something that you don't actually want to affect change on. Fuck off. If you're willing to let minorities die because your ideological purity is more important than blocking and ousting fascists, you are blinded by privilege and weakened by apathy. You are a coward and are beneath contempt. Yeah, evergreen fucking tweet from Wanderer. Absolutely fucking true. I know that I keep making this segment, and I know that every single time it gets a little bit more annoying that I have to keep talking about this, but I have to keep talking about this because people keep doing it. I keep logging onto Twitter and I keep seeing people say that these are the two, like these two people are exactly the same, that there are no differences, that it doesn't matter, that if you vote for Biden, you're still going to get all of the same fucking policies that you would for Trump. Fuck off. You're not special. Go out there and fucking vote. My vote doesn't matter because blah, blah, gerrymandering. Yeah, I don't care. I actually don't care. I don't care if your vote literally technically doesn't matter. Do it anyway. Do it anyway. Build up the fucking habit. Because here's the thing. It's not just the national elections that matter. We're going to talk a little bit later about local elections and about why it's so important to get involved in those. But I need you to understand that this is just one aspect. We're just talking about the national elections because that's what people seem to like care about publicly. But not participating in voting is also fucking over your local communities, which for people who seem to care about mutual aid, don't seem to give a fuck about. So shut the fuck up, get in your car, and go to the fucking polls. I don't care. I don't care if you think it's cringe. I don't care if you think that nothing's going to change. Fucking do it. Just trust me. Please, please, just do it for me. I promise you. I promise you. Even if you could be voting and it could have no effect, there's a chance that it could. And I think that it's way more worth it to do it on the chance that there could be some positive effect. Because if there's not going to be any change anyway, what are you fucking losing? People are waking up. People are moving to the left. You just have to get them out there. And as Ghost correctly says in chat, it is incredibly easy to vote right now because of mail-in voting. It is so easy. I haven't been to a physical polling station in like 5 years because I just mail-in vote. This is not something you do a one and done thing. It is not something you're going to get instant gratification from. Get it out of your head that anything that you do is going to instantly have a positive or negative consequence. You are likely going to see these effects over time. But if we are just going to go based on what the candidates are fucking saying, take them at their word. They are not the same fucking people. Now just do me a favor. Log off. Go touch some grass. Go get laid. Go do something. And then go vote, please. That's it. That's the segment. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to give it a like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to support my work further, consider becoming a channel member, a patron on Patreon, or donating through my Ko-fi or my GoFundMe for gender-affirming surgeries. Any help is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.